What's the situation there now?
Well, as you just said, it's been several days now of continuing airstrikes and strikes from the sea by the Israeli military. We can give you an update that the death toll has risen since Wednesday to 52 Palestinians killed in Israeli strikes. The latest victim was a woman in her 50s whose body was pulled out of the rubble of her building in the Tufah district of Gaza City. Medical sources say that around half of that number, 52 killed, have been civilians, and 14 of them have been children. Just a few hours ago, there was a raid on a strike on the Shateh, or beach, refugee camp here in Gaza City, home to some of the poorest people among the Palestinian population here, people who live on largely on what they receive from the United Nations UNRWA agency in terms of food and essential supplies. A child and an adult were killed there. So obviously the bombardments are taking their toll physically on Gaza, both in terms of taking lives, in terms of destroying buildings, some of which are residential, which are near to or right by sites from which rockets have been launched, but others are in the same area as the buildings which Israel has identified as targets because they're linked to the Hamas government. We saw that the Prime Minister's office was levelled on Friday, but there are people who live in areas like that. It's extremely worrying for ordinary citizens, and although people are out and about on the streets at night, the roads become very quiet and people are very worried.
Nadim, the Israeli military has just released a statement about the strikes on those buildings housing journalists earlier today. It says, quote, the IDF, that's the Israeli army, calls on international journalists and correspondents who operate in the Gaza Strip carrying out their duties to stay clear of Hamas bases and facilities which serve them in their activity against the citizens of Israel. Nadim, what are we to make of that?
Well, Adrian, this comes in response to criticism of the Israeli military for hitting two buildings not very far from here, a few hundred meters away, overnight in airstrikes. Two buildings which house very well-known broadcasters. In the first airstrike, the building that was hit houses the Palestinian TV station Al-Quds, as we heard in Mariana's report, but also several other international broadcasters. And there, one Palestinian cameraman lost his leg. Several other journalists were wounded. And the second attack on another building, again, a building which houses international media as well as the Hamas-run television station Al-Aqsa. Now, obviously, Israel is saying that these were identified by what it calls precise intelligence, these sites. It's saying that it basically targeted two Hamas operational communication sites. Now, that's how it's labelling those premises, but as far as we know, that's the way that Israel is describing those broadcasters rather than anything else. It's saying that they were legitimate targets because they were linked to the Hamas government which runs the Gaza Strip, pure and simple. Now, of course, they knew as well that there were other broadcasters, other journalists there. And now they're coming under extreme criticism from people like the Foreign Press Association, based in Britain, for not being more cautious. In response, I think, this statement warning journalists to stay away from, quote, Hamas bases. That's going to be a very, very difficult thing for journalists carrying out their duties in the Gaza Strip, as the Israeli statement said. Because wherever you go, there will be sites which are, for example, ministries, which are hospitals linked to the Ministry of Health run by Hamas, and so on. If we want to interview people who've been injured in these airstrikes, we will go to those hospitals. And therefore, it's leading to rather, to some people questioning whether journalists will be able to carry out their duties, I think.
Yeah, Nadim, the IDF statement goes on to say that, that the Israeli military targeted aerials on the top of those buildings and not the buildings or the people inside them. But for the moment, many thanks. Rockets continue to be launched from Gaza, of course, towards targets in Israel. Earlier, Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system intercepted 2 rockets that were heading towards Tel Aviv. The air raid sirens sounded in Ashkelon. Residents there were seen running to the shelters. A residential building was hit. 2 people are said to have been injured there. Well, Israel's Prime Minister has told his cabinet that he's ready to step up the Gaza operation.
The Israel Defense Forces have attacked more than 1,000 terror targets in the Gaza Strip, and it continues its operation at this very moment. It causes significant blows to the weapons aimed towards Israel, its operators, and the people who send them. We are exacting a heavy price from Hamas and the terrorist organizations, and the Israel Defense Force is prepared for a significant expansion of the operation.
It was after those latest rockets fired from Gaza that the Israeli Prime Minister promised to significantly expand the operation in Gaza. Let's bring in now Al Jazeera's Nisreen El-Shamayleh, who's in Jerusalem. Israelis coming to terms with a new reality then, that cities like Tel Aviv and Jerusalem are now within range of militants' rockets in Gaza.
Yes, Adrian, this has been the new reality in the last few days. If you've seen rockets launched in the direction of Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. The Israeli Prime Minister has also said that the army has managed to take out over 1,000 so-called terror targets. However, I will tell you that the Israeli army and the government's goal is public and clear. The aim of any operation in Gaza is to cripple and destroy the rocket launching capabilities. So as long as the Israelis don't feel that they've fully achieved that goal, they will continue to threaten with a ground operation. That said, the Israeli Prime Minister did not mention specifics, neither did he mention the possibility of a ground operation. However, we know from the Israeli army spokesperson that the army reassesses the situation on a daily basis, sometimes several times a day, due to the rockets that are launched into the direction of Israel, or even a lull in rocket launching, as we saw for 8 hours overnight. But the thing is, so long as there are rockets being launched in the direction of Israel, whether or not they are destroyed and intercepted by the Iron Dome missile system, this all increases the likelihood and the possibility of stronger action and even a ground operation in Gaza, Adrian.
Is there a possibility that the Prime Minister's comments were meant for public consumption, while behind the scenes diplomacy may be edging towards some sort of ceasefire? The French Foreign Minister is there today with a flurry of meetings. We're hearing that the Mideast envoy Tony Blair is also on his way to Israel today.
I mean, it could be seen as for public consumption in Israel, and also to maybe play a so-called psychological war with Hamas. If Israel continues to make statements that frighten Hamas, such as Israel, calling 75,000 reservists to be prepared for a ground operation, and if Israel says it will continue to expand its operation with inside Gaza, some people see that as Israel trying to warn and scare and frighten Hamas. And as you mentioned, there is a lot going on the diplomatic level. We've got the Middle East envoy for the quartet, Tony Blair, meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister on Sunday, and as well the French Foreign Minister will be arriving from Paris. He will be meeting with officials in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem, and with Benjamin Netanyahu. Probably the efforts will be concentrated on the possibility of a ceasefire. It is difficult to say that the Israeli army or the government are adamant about an operation in Gaza. Actually, there is analysis that indicates that the government is not interested in a ground operation in Gaza, but if it has to, it will. So we think that Israel may accept a ceasefire based on its conditions, and that is if whoever brokers the ceasefire, such as maybe Egypt or these efforts by the Europeans and the quartet, get Gaza and Hamas to stop firing rockets into Israel, Israel may be interested in a ceasefire, Adrian.
Okay. Nisreen, many thanks indeed. Nisreen El-Shamayleh in Jerusalem. Let's bring in now